Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever felt that knot in your stomach when you think about investing? Like it's this exclusive club only for people with, trust funds or these giant, intimidating piles of cash. So many of us believe you need a fortune just to get started, which, let's be honest, becomes the perfect excuse to, well, not start at all. So today, we're doing a deep dive into the surprising power of beginning small with investing. Our source for this is a really insightful personal account. It's called The Small Start to Real Investing. And our mission here is to pull out the practical insights for you, to see how taking those seemingly tiny first steps can actually lead to pretty profound financial growth, and maybe even more importantly, a fundamental shift in your mindset.
And that initial feeling you mentioned, that sort of overwhelm or feeling like you're not quite adequate, it's incredibly common. Yeah. This story really hits home because it highlights, well, it's not just about specific stocks or funds, right? It's more about these universal principles, like discipline, and overcoming those very real psychological barriers that stop so many people. Just stop them before they even begin.
Absolutely. So get this. The person in this story wanted to invest with just $1,000. $1,000.
Okay.
And the reactions they got. Things like, oh, you might as well spend it on a vacation, you'll get more out of it.
Ouch.
Or just a dismissive, well, that's not real investing. Sounds pretty brutal, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's tough to hear.
And honestly, it's kind of understandable in a way. I mean, we live in a world that's constantly throwing around phrases like six-figure portfolios. So that $1,000, even though it's $1,000, which isn't nothing, it can feel like you're trying to climb a mountain.
That's a really powerful point, that feeling of inadequacy. It isn't just internal, is it? It often gets reinforced by those voices outside. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, those dismissive reactions, they really highlight these common myths that actively discourage people from starting small.
Yeah.
There's this pervasive idea that if it's not some huge sum, it's just not worth the effort. And it creates this, tug of war inside you, doesn't it? Between the fear of losing the money you have, and maybe even more strongly, the fear of that money just sitting there doing nothing, while prices for everything just keep going up.
Exactly. And this wasn't, some spare change found under the couch cushions. The person behind this story, they actually saved that first $1,000. They did it by actively cutting back on takeout, canceling subscriptions they weren't using, even selling an old gaming console that was just gathering dust. Doesn't that very effort make the investment, no matter how small it seems, inherently more meaningful?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It absolutely does. That effort, it's not just about getting the money together. It's about building financial discipline before the first dollar even gets invested, you see?
Right. Makes sense.
And that kind of intentionality, that's a really powerful predictor of long-term success, much more so, actually, than the starting amount itself.
Okay, so they navigated the skepticism. They saved up that first mountain of $1,000. The next logical question was, okay, where do I even put this money?
The big question.
Yeah, and that's where the research started, but not the kind that makes your head spin, The goal was simple. Find simple, beginner-friendly investment options. No aiming to be the next Warren Buffett or anything like that.
Make it manageable.
Exactly, and that's when index funds really came onto the radar. For those of you maybe not familiar, they're basically, baskets of stocks. They just mirror the overall market. They're usually described as low risk, low cost, and historically pretty reliable over the long haul. And this just made so much sense because, as the source puts it, it wasn't flashy, but it was real.
Solid. Dependable.
Yeah. So the first plunge was taken, opening a Roth IRA. Now, for those of you familiar with investing stuff, a Roth IRA lets your investments grow tax-free. And qualified withdrawals in retirement, also tax-free. That's a huge advantage.
Huge.
And for anyone just starting out, maybe thinking retirement, that's decades away. The key insight here is really what the source highlighted. The earlier you start, the more time your money has to grow, especially in that tax-advantaged way.
And this is exactly where compound interest, it really shows itself as this sort of quiet superpower.
Ah, yes. The magic of compounding.
It really is. It's incredibly powerful when you give it time. It lets your money earn returns on itself, which then earn more returns. It's exponential growth, basically, which makes starting early, even with a small amount, strategically brilliant. It really does. And this just reinforces why index funds were a smart choice here. Good for long-term, low-effort growth.
Right.
It's the total opposite of that high-stress, often losing game of trying to, pick winners or time the market perfectly.
Right. So the initial allocation was pretty thoughtful too. $500 went into a total market index fund. Straightforward. The other $500 was split. Some went into a high-yield savings account, for easy access, liquidity.
Smart move.
And then a little bit of individual stocks, just a tiny taste. Not really aiming for big gains there, but more to just get a direct feel for how the market moves, but without taking on significant risk. That kind of cautious diversification. Probably a good idea for any beginner.
Definitely. Spreads the risk.
So after taking the plunge, putting the money in, what happened?
The big reveal.
Well, initially, nothing dramatic happened. Like, the money didn't double overnight. Shocker, right?
Reality check.
Yeah. In fact, in the first few weeks, it barely moved at all. No fireworks, no instant riches.
Pretty typical, actually.
But here's the really profound insight, the bit that really shifts the whole thing. The act of doing it, of actually investing, it transforms your identity.
The mindset shift.
Exactly. It wasn't just about the $1,000 anymore. It was about fundamentally becoming an investor. That small change in mindset, the source says, that was everything. But I wonder, for someone listening, does that identity really stick? Especially if the market dips again soon after. How do you stop it from just being like a fleeting feeling?
That's a really crucial question, a great distinction to make. Because while that initial shift is huge, like you said, everything's sustaining it. That takes more than just calling yourself an investor.
Right.
The market dip, which the story gets into, that actually tests the new identity.
Okay. The trial by fire.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
It's in weathering those storms when things look rough that the identity really solidifies. It goes from being just a concept in your head to something real, something you've lived through. And that's what builds that powerful habit of consistency. Once that identity shifted, the person started consistently adding more, even $50 here, $100 there. It wasn't about getting rich quick. It was about building a practice, something sustainable.
And then, bam, the marks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where this story offers such a powerful counter-narrative. It really underscores how important it is to understand market volatility. Ups and downs, they're an inherent part of investing. It's not a sign you failed. The critical decision here, the really brave one, was to stay the course when it felt uncomfortable. Instead of reacting emotionally and, like you said, locking in losses by selling low, this wasn't just about weathering one storm. It was described as a real turning point, a moment that solidified that long-term perspective, financial discipline in action.
So fast forward to the 1-year mark. The portfolio wasn't huge, obviously, but it had grown. But it wasn't just growth in dollars, it was growth, fundamentally, in discipline.
That's the key takeaway.
Yeah, that original $1,000 became more than just money. It became proof. Proof that something people said wasn't possible was possible, and that gave the confidence to start setting bigger goals.
Building momentum.
And this is where the source says that the real magic happened. That person started seeing opportunities everywhere, seeing how small financial decisions actually added up, how spending a bit less over here could free up money to invest over there. They even started a side hustle, not necessarily to get rich quick from it, but specifically to accelerate that investing fund. The source uses the analogy of a snowball. Why is that so fitting here?
Oh, it's incredibly fitting. Perfect analogy. Because just like a snowball starting small down a hill, the initial effort seems tiny, almost insignificant, right?
Yeah, roll in that first little bit.
Exactly. But as it rolls, it accumulates more snow, or in this case, more invested capital, and just as importantly, more consistent habits. And it just gains momentum, it gains size, exponentially. It's so easy for us, I think, to get caught up in the flashy stories, the big wins.
Oh yeah, the crypto millionaires, the meme stock heroes.
Right, all that noise. But what often gets missed, and what this story illustrates so powerfully, is the quiet power of starting small and sticking with it.
Yeah.
That approach fundamentally shifted the person from being sort of reactive with their money to being truly intentional. And that is what actually builds wealth over time.
And this really is the core message for you listening right now. It's not about the amount, it's about the approach. Full stop. So if you're thinking, but I don't even have $1,000, that's okay. That's really okay. Start with what you can, seriously. Even $10, $20, $50 a month. The important part is just building the habit, getting started.
And you will hear the noise. You absolutely will. People saying you don't have enough, or oh, it's too late now, or it's too risky.
Always reasons not to.
Always. But as the source wisely points out, often those people, they usually aren't doing it themselves. They're kind of stuck in those same myths that hold so many of us back from even trying in the first place.
So don't wait for the perfect moment, please don't, because as we're reminded here, that day never actually comes, does it?
Nope. Life gets in the way.
Life is always messy. There are always endless reasons to delay. You know the saying, the best time to start was yesterday. The next best time, it's right now.
Absolutely.
So what's the profound lesson here from this deep dive? I think it's this. The moment you decide to invest in your future, even in the smallest possible way, you're doing something incredibly powerful. You're making that shift from being reactive with your money, maybe feeling controlled by it, to being intentional. You're basically telling yourself that your goals matter, that your future matters. And that shift in mindset, honestly, that truly is everything.
It's the foundation.
It is. You don't have to be a millionaire to build wealth. You really don't. You just need to start. And remember, consistency beats intensity every single time. A small, smart decision repeated over and over and over, that can lead to massive change over the years.
The snowball effect again.
Exactly. So here's what I want to leave you with, something to maybe mull over. Don't underestimate the power of small actions. Please don't. And don't believe that lie that your money isn't enough to matter. It matters because you matter. What you do with what you have right now today, that is far more important than what you wish you had. So start where you are, use what you have, do what you can, and believe in your ability to grow, because once you do that, you'll realize the most powerful thing you've ever invested in was yourself.